This film proves that sometimes patience pays off. Nighthawks is a 1978 gay British film directed by Ron Peck, and it follows a gay man named Jim who's a teacher, but he spends his nights in desperate search of some connection. It's a bit like Cruising and a little bit like Taxi Driver, but overall it's its own unique film. And I throughoutly enjoyed this film, and I can't wait to tell you more about it. It's a film that really does take its time, but I do feel that it concludes satisfyingly. Now, I can tell right away that this movie was going to be good just from its atmospheric opening with the club music and this use of long takes and point of view shots. You could tell that there was a cinematic master at work behind the scenes. And now let me be clear, a lot of people might not like this movie because it's a bit monotonous and a lot kind of doesn't happen on a surface level, but there is a lot subtextually going on in this movie, and it does take a while to slowly develop, and then things do come out, and for me, it was completely rewarding. But this film is not going to be for everybody. If you like movies that take time, then this movie is definitely for you. I've talked a couple times about movies from the 70s, stuff like A Very Natural Thing, or more recently, Saturday Night at the Baths. And while those movies are definitely good and worth watching, you do feel like there's almost like they're introductions to what gay people were back in the 70s. And they don't really reach too deep into kind of existential things. And I feel like this movie does. And it goes beyond just gay issues. This goes on to issues and themes that are universal and would apply to everybody. And I think that's why this movie dives deeper than some other films that I've seen from the 70s. But yet I haven't seen all of them. So far, I think that this movie is the one to beat. And I just want to say, like, sometimes those movies from the 70s, they didn't have a lot of money. It was very low budget. And sometimes the performances suffer, not because the actors were not good, but, you know, film stock was expensive, so you can't really do a second take. But here, the performances are completely realistic, in my opinion. And not just that, but they're incredibly nuanced. And it does feel like there was a lot of attention made to that and to make it feel like very naturalistic and realistic. It's, to me, one of the most like realistic films of that decade that I've seen in terms of dealing with gay characters. The main character is a character named Jim, and this is not like a coming out story where he's conflicted and dealing with this realization that he's gay. He's already gay at the get-go, and he's ahead of everybody else. You feel like the big antagonist in this is society dealing with who he is, and it's not so much an internal conflict, and that was really refreshing to see, especially given the time in which this came out. I will be talking about a little bit of spoilers. I'm not going to be giving away major plot points, but I will be talking about certain scenes, so if that bothers you, then you go watch the movie and come back. Like I said, this film has so much good naturalistic performances, and the way it even frames these shots, like there's these two shots and they just hold on the two shots, and it really does allow for you to be invested in. There's a lot of long takes in this, and a lot of times when you see like a oneer, what they call it, like when the camera doesn't stop recording and it captures everything in one shot, it could come off as kind of like a show-off move or, hey, look at us. But here, you don't feel like that's happening. I feel like these shots are just inviting you deeper and making you feel more immersed in this character's world, because for me, when I don't see the camera cut, you feel like this is a real character. Like subconsciously, maybe you feel like, oh, this is kind of like a documentary. Like we're actually not cutting, because when we see a cut, we know maybe subconsciously that, something's being hidden here, something's being manipulated. But when the camera never stops, we do feel like there's such a reality to it. And the use of long takes here, I think, do that. There is this really good long take where the character is in the nightclub and he's looking for some connection, and it pushes in slowly into his eyes, and we see his eyes just dart around, and in that moment I felt his anxiety, this deep anxiety for connection. It has this kind of emotional investment that happens because you do spend a long time with the character. Now, there's a great scene where the main character is out with a colleague and they're having drinks, and It really captured this feeling of this awkwardness that when you have to come out to somebody you just met, perfectly captures that. And the nuance in the performances here is something to take note of, especially how the character reacts when he finally does say he's gay to her and how she freezes up. It's very subtle. And she just kind of, her drinks, she holds her drink and she freezes up. It's a two shot. So they're not cutting back and forth. So you kind of have to look for it. And that just makes it even more realistic to me. For me, great performances from actors is not just about how they deliver their lines, but it's about body language and behavior. And this scene is just a great example of that. The main character to me was reminding me of Al Pacino in Cruising, and he kind of looks like Al Pacino. And what's interesting about that is that throughout the movie, I had this ominous, foreboding feeling like something bad was going to happen. And it may be because this film also kind of resembles the work of Paul Schrader. And Paul Schrader is the writer of Taxi Driver and the director of First Reformed. And if you know those movies, you know that there are characters like this character in this film, whereas those films kind of end in this kind of violent explosion. This film ends in a different sort of way that doesn't. And that's why I think this movie is a lot deeper than other films that I've seen from that decade, is because it's hitting at these universal themes. And for me, the movie represents this loneliness that is in this character, and the loneliness is this catalyst for him to go out and find some connection, even though he can't really commit. And that's his big struggle. There's a scene that happens about an hour and 15 minutes in that kind of reveals itself about what is going on in this character's mind. Because throughout the film, we're kind of guessing like, where exactly is this going? And this scene that happens there is a very good sigh of relief of you get to hear about like what's going on in this guy's mind, even though it doesn't completely left you off the hook and you kind of do feel like you don't know exactly where it's going to go. It's a wonderful scene because there's so much tension that is built up until that moment. Because a lot of this movie up until that moment is just like a repeat of the same thing over and over and over and again. And I know that kind of does sound like it could be boring, but it's not, because the scenes we get to see a little bit more and learn a little bit more about this character. And there's really like no one scene you can see to see the impact of this movie. It's the amalgam of all these scenes together that build into this satisfying conclusion. Not giving anything away, but the way this film ends, the concluding scene that happens, more of like the climactic scene that happens at a school, man, it's devastating. And it's such a devastating scene, but at the same time, a very hopeful scene. And I thought that it was just an incredible way to end the movie, besides ending it like in a violent way or a firecracker-like way. It's such a more subtle, unique approach to this. And a lot of times when I watch movies from the 70s, I use stuff like, oh, it's a time capsule. And very much movies can work like that. If you want to see a moment in time, you can go look back. I feel like because of the themes that it's talking about loneliness, about the need for connection, about this inability to connect when you are desperate for it. But this movie is not just a time capsule. I think this movie is timeless.